But I think one of the biggest questions right now that we are hearing is about how much money the Pac-12 is going to revenue share in college football, and I think it is a huge question mark because I think we all know that the Pac-12 is a conference that is going to struggle out of the gate probably for between 3 to 5 years to get themselves off the ground financially. It is an incredibly difficult thing to do. It is an incredibly difficult process to undertake when you are adding members from multiple conferences, when you are neither a strong football or basketball entity one way or the other. You've got to find a way to keep your financial house in order. Speaking of lawsuits, obviously, the Pac-12 and the Mountain West have not settled mediation. They have not settled their lawsuits yet. So you are still paying lawyers. You have all of these money questions. And now this House settlement is in full effect. And you are looking at a situation where the Pac-12 has to make a decision as to how much money each member is going to revenue share inside of football. And sources close to that situation told us today that number is going to be probably maxed out at $7 million per school or thereabouts, that each school in the Pac-12 will revenue share to its football teams $7 million. And if you think about what the expected number is across college sports, and I think this is an important point of clarity because a lot of people seem to be confused about the $20.5 million revenue share number. That is the total number of revenue sharing across all sports. That $20.5 million is not just revenue sharing for football. That is all of your sports. And it is believed in most corners of the college sports landscape, that $20 million at the upper levels will be probably right around $15 million in college football, $3 million in college basketball, and the balance to all of the other sports in your athletic department. That's at the P4 level. You start getting into the G5s, and it is a very interesting question when you look at the Pac-12 situation with all the money they've spent on lawyers, with all the money they've spent on exit fees, poaching fees, all of those expenses. We get into their TV contract. How much are they going to have to pay to produce their games? Like all of this stuff that is coming together to form the Pac-12. How much money is each school going to revenue share with their football program? Jake, I think it is a hugely important number, and they better get it right.
Absolutely. And I think that, the philosophy around revenue sharing is really, to me, the most fascinating part, because obviously everyone's going to do it a little bit differently, right? I mean, we have this $20.5 million number to sort of work off of, but, the discrepancies between, Ohio State and Boise State are still going to be there, as far as how much they're going to put into just their football program. And I think that that's what becomes difficult is if you're the Pac-12, you're sitting here trying to figure out, all right, well, how can we competitively revenue share in college football? But then also, how can we make sure that our member institutions are making enough money in our media rights deal? How can we make sure that between those two, we're also winning games? Like, I think that there's that relationship between winning, between your TV money, and then also between your NIL money and how aggressive you want to be in that realm. And I think that that's where you start to understand that, schools like, whether it's Texas State that we've talked so much about, or any of those lower level schools, right, that are play football and take it seriously and do their best. It's going to be hard to just step up or transition into another conference and be expected to just lay out cash like there's no tomorrow. And that's kind of what I feel like the biggest problem with the settlement is right now for people, is they have to figure out, like, how are we going to make this work? And so the idea that, yesterday on the show, we're sitting here talking about Boise State AD Jeremiah Dickey, saying that it's going to be 6 months before they've got a private equity deal done, and that they're only, considering it or whatever is crazy to me, because I sit here and I say, well, this is not some small amount of money. This isn't like, oh, well, you guys are just going to have to revenue share $3 million across your athletic department. You're talking about $20.5 million, man. That's not a small amount of money. So I absolutely agree that this conversation about, okay, here's the total top line number for the whole department, but then what's the chunk for football, and what does that, if you say, okay, well, we're going to revenue share 7, or we're going to revenue share 12, or 15, what does
and
that
who
say?
makes that decision?
Yeah, and that's a great point. How do you as an athletic department come to that decision? Because that for sure is going to be different for every school.
Well, in talking to folks around college football the last few weeks about this, one of the big questions is at the G5 level, I don't believe you can leave it on the lap of the schools to make that decision. I think in the Mountain West and in the Pac-12 and in the AAC, all these smaller conferences, you have to be in lockstep, because you can't have one school spending exponentially more on football than another school, revenue sharing exponentially more in football than another school, because it creates a power disparity. It creates a financial advantage. And the advantage that G5 conferences have is their unity and their ability to agree on a financial model that allows them to exist. And I think in P4s, hey, listen, you're not going to tell Georgia or Alabama how much to spend on revenue sharing. You're not going to do that. You're not going to tell. And furthermore, in the Pac-12, are you really going to tell Gonzaga how much they should be revenue sharing in basketball? That's a really interesting dynamic, because they don't have a football team at Gonzaga. GCU, Grand Canyon in the Mountain West, does not have a football team. So there's all these dynamics at play. And when you start tinkering with levers, and you start trying to find the right formula to create balance and competitive balance in your conference, I think this is a huge issue for the Pac-12.
Yeah, and especially when you consider that the that the payments are not going to be equal either from the conference to the schools based on how they perform.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah.
you really start getting into a conversation about, all right, well, hey, like we're like, if you were to not have equal revenue sharing, like the same level, and again, it needs to be said, I think it's the same bare minimum, right? Because I think what no one's going to do is no one's going to say, well, you can't spend more, you can't revenue share more. I mean, if Boise State wants to revenue share, $20.5 million just to football, knock yourself out, dude, and you can spend more and do whatever you want.
But then how does that work for Gonzaga?
I don't know.
If it is not,
question.
because if it is not fair and equitable across the board, and Gonzaga, for instance, will have a financial advantage, I would think. I don't know what you guys think, but doesn't a non-football member have a significant financial advantage because they don't have to bear the burden of sharing money financially? Now, are they making as much money in athletics as is Gonzaga going to make as much money as Boise State? Well, yeah, I would think they would, because their basketball product is very good and they compete at a very high level. So my question is, if I am the Pac-12 in the Mountain West, how am I mandating revenue sharing for Grand Canyon and Gonzaga? I think it is a huge question. I think it is a very critical central issue to the success of the G5s, how you legislate revenue sharing. And again, I was told point blank that in their very first meeting, one of the very first topics they brought up was, the Pac-12, how are we handling revenue sharing? And I think that's exactly what it should be, because it seems like, and I don't mean to get ahead of things, it seems like the Pac-12 has significant momentum right now, right? You've got your membership intact now. You've got a grant of rights signed. It is, from what I understand, the Pac-12 media rights deal is 85% done. They got to go and add another member to fulfill the terms of that deal. Like, they've got a lot going on, and it's all in the positive for the first time. I think in this new incarnation of the Pac-12, everything we are seeing from the Pac-12 is positive right now. They have lots of momentum. A decision like revenue sharing in football, I think, is gigantic. And I'm told they don't have a firm answer on that yet.
Well, I don't think that anyone has real, a real clear, just clear cut plan as to what's best here. And I think that's what's challenging is, given your situation, what's best versus what could you do? Because like again, if you're Ohio State or whoever you want to look at in the P4, there's what they have to do, and then there's what they probably want to do above that, to
Yeah.
make themselves more
And you're
attractive.
not going to tell them how to do business.
No, and I think what's hard is like with like the Mountain West or the Pac-12 specifically, you have such a interesting mix of schools that have such wide ranging, interest in winning in football that I think that conversation of like, hey, what's our baseline? Like, what's our agreed upon number that we're all committed to? That's going to be difficult to come to. They'll figure it out, but I just don't think that that's going to be some easy, cakewalk conversation, because Boise State's
Yeah.
going to want to revenue share at the highest level they possibly can for recruiting and making sure football pays the bills and everything that they need to do. Whereas, Utah State's probably not as interested, with all due respect. Like, I think you have other schools that are not going to be as willing to just throw money
That's
into
right.
revenue sharing. And I think
That's
that's
right.
what's difficult, because you're literally saying to schools like Utah State, just them being the example, hey, well, theoretically, you're not going to make as much money in this conference as Boise State would, and we're going to ask you to pay the same bottom line. Like, that's what becomes difficult, but that is the reality of it. So I that's what I'm
But
saying. I just don't think it's that easy.
I also think one of the unspoken truths about relationships, especially relationships that are this complex as you have in college football conferences, you have to get on the same page with your membership if you're the Pac-12. Because how many times has money broken up relationships? A lot, a whole lot. And I think you're looking at a situation where for the first 3 to 5 years of their existence in this new league, the Pac-12 is going to be financially strapped. So every penny that they can hang on to and keep in their pockets is a difference-making dollar figure. And I'm not exaggerating that. Having talked to athletic administrators around these two conferences, one of the real considerations was, hey, if we go to the Pac-12, how much financial insecurity will we face for the next 3 to 5 years? During the term of that first grant of rights, how much financial instability will we be dealing with? And I think it's a really smart analytical way to make a decision, because if you are the Pac-12, you really sold membership on a lot of unknowns. And now you've got to go and get that media rights deal signed, sealed, and delivered. You got to bring in this mediation in a positive favor. And the exiting members of the Mountain West have to find a way to mitigate these exit fees, if at all, as much as possible. Because you don't really have a grasp on, well, how many of our teams are going to go to the NCAA tournament? What do those tournament shares look like? How many are we going to get a team into the college football playoff? Is that going to happen? That $4 million is a lot of money. Those tournament shares are a lot of money. And if you are the teams leaving the Mountain West, your shares stay in the Mountain West. Your shares for Gonzaga stay in the WCC. So it's very difficult to kind of project forward how many Pac-12 teams are getting into the NCAA tournament. How many Mountain West teams are going to get into the NCAA tournament in a league that has been, because the Mountain West, and I know a lot of people don't like the truth of the facts in these conversations, the Mountain West has been a very good basketball conference. They have routinely put multiple teams in the NCAA tournament. Will that continue going forward? I think that's an awfully difficult question to answer for the PAC and for the Mountain West. So you have all of these moving parts, and now you are trying to plot financially how much you are going to get back to your athletes. I think it is at a maximum $7 million per school.
Mm-hmm.
Especially early in this new entity of the Pac-12. I think you have to err on the low side because you have a lot of financial unknowns. And my question is, if you err on the low side, and let's say it is $5 million, can you compete with the rest of the schools on the West Coast? if your competitors, and I don't even mean just the Mountain West, I mean the Big 10, I mean the Big 12, like if your competitors know that your very best players are going to take a financial hit in revenue sharing money to go to your university, they're going to leverage that against you.
Yes, of course.
And so my question is, how are you going to math that out? What equations, what formulas are you going to use to determine what you can and cannot afford to revenue share? Do you see how impossibly difficult that is?
You better win, bro.
I'm saying, like, I think this Pac-12, it's just so difficult to do what they're doing. Frankly, I don't know that we've ever seen a conference come together like this.
Yeah, and I hope we get to hear Teresa Gould talk about what the end goal is for the Pac-12, what the mission is, because you don't embark on a path this difficult without having a real serious understanding of like where you're trying to go and what you're trying to do. And I just have to think that there's a stated goal in that group of what they're trying to do.
All right, let's get into the comment section on the Monty Show, presented by our friends at The Advocates, theadvocates.com, the best injury attorneys in the business. You guys, I tell you every single day, they're just good people to do business with. And I can tell you, when you get into an accident, and we are in the 100 most deadliest days of the year, from Memorial Day to Labor Day, if you're out riding your motorcycle, if you are out riding your bicycle, if you are traveling for holidays, if you are getting hurt at work, getting hurt on your commute, you need people who have seen your situation before and they know how to navigate the shark-infested waters of the insurance claims process. Give it to the advocates. Hand them your claims process. They will fight for you. You will get what you deserve, because you certainly didn't deserve to get into the accident. You didn't deserve to get hit while you were riding your motorcycle or your bicycle. You didn't deserve to get hurt while you were working. You do deserve an advocate to fight for you. And the best part is, it doesn't cost you anything out of pocket, ever. No consultation fees, no retainers, just clear, risk-free advice at The Advocates. Check them out online, theadvocates.com. Chat with an injury attorney 24/7, 365, and it won't cost you a dime. Okay. So I see that we are already in filtered land. I feel like every day we're setting a new record for how quickly somebody gets filtered.
This might be the new record. I mean, it's only been 23 minutes into the show,
bro. How many comments in is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 comments in, and Conundrum gets filtered.
Yes, you did. Yes, you did.
How did you AAR getting filtered? Like how could you possibly
doing? What are you doing?
Is it that difficult, you guys? Okay. Every time we talk about the Pac-12, people lose their minds. People absolutely lose their minds, and I guess I just shouldn't be surprised. Mr. Preston, how the heck are you? America's favorite auto mechanic. Good to see you, sir. Big Blue Horses, hello. Welcome to the nightmare. Yes, everybody, please hit the like button. Big shout out to all of our audio podcast listeners. Audio podcast is doing great. We really appreciate it. We just relaunched with our friends at Hubbard. Hubbard Radio now handles all of our podcasting. You can find it anywhere you get a podcast. Apple/iTunes, iHeart, Spotify, you name it, wherever you get your audio podcast. Make sure you search The Monty Show, Monty, The Monty Show. Then come on over to YouTube, hit subscribe, give us a thumbs up. It really helps the channel grow.